Welcome to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 29-year veteran writer, illustrator, and editor of science fiction, fantasy, horror, comics, and role-playing games. And this is a comics review day. I know I've missed quite a few days last week or so. There were supposed to be live draws and comic reviews. Been kind of in and out of it with health, fighting off... I don't know. It wasn't really the flu. It wasn't COVID, thank goodness. Just different things. Had some blood sugar issues where I was spiking way too high and had to take some time off and do a little self-care. But we're back, and so let's go ahead and get straight into the reviews. We'll be reviewing 6 books tonight, starting with BUN'S Comfort Food Corner. It is published by Shortbox UK. The creator is Chu Nop. And the genre is cooking comics. It was released in October of 2021. I received it on November 12th. This is a Kickstarter book as part of a collective order from Shortbox UK. Well, it's about, it's basically a step-by-step photo recipe and a mix of step-by-step photo recipes and charming comics. And it's loosely based on Chu's own experiences with food and learning how to cook when he was in college, or when they were in college, I should say. Let Bun regale you with anecdotes of food mishaps and successes while providing delicious, low-maintenance, go-to recipes that can be used regularly. What I thought of it is that's a cute little booklet. I might send it over to a chef friend of mine who claims she wants to do a comic book about cooking. Maybe it will give her some ideas about what she actually wants to do. It's been a while since she talked to me, and she just kind of disappeared. But anyway, the recipes offered in the book are all okay, but they're not anything I personally would make. But that doesn't mean they're not good recipes. There's like kale pesto, pork tofu soup, cold noodles, some other stuff that makes sense for the author in question to select, and even makes sense in terms of person on a budget in college. They're all good choices. They're just not anything that I would make for myself or my father as a rule. Even though with that being said, I do feel like the book does its job very nicely. It's very well crafted, and I see no reason why it wouldn't appeal to other readers. I recommend it for ages 13 and up, and I give it 3.5 stars. Let's take a quick look here at the book. It's very manga, cartoonish type stuff. Talking about how they like to eat different things, but it was costing them too much. Always going out to eat, buying sushi rolls and shawarma and other stuff like that. A pork bun. The person lives in K-Town, which I guess is Korean town. So they could get the ingredients, but it was just, kind of a choice. Do you want to eat healthy and affordably, or do you want to buy the junk food, so to speak? And so it's about their, experimentation and learning how to cook and do different things and go to the markets and figure out how to afford and buy and prepare and store different foods for different cooking. And again, this is very much Korean type based foods with rice and pasta. Here's one of the recipes, bread congee. It gives you the ingredients, and then it gives you step-by-step instructions on what to do with visual aids. Another one they have is pan-fried chicken, which you can take your rotisserie chicken that you get at the store from the deli or from Walmart or whatever, and how to make that on a much smaller scale using that as a base. Or if you don't want to get it from a rotisserie chicken that you can buy, you can get the sliced chicken breasts and stuff like that as well. But just little things like that. How to make cold noodles. Different things like that. Again, the kale pesto, they tell you, well, you're going to need a blender for that. But again, there's all the written ingredients and photo references to give you an idea of what you should be doing. Because I got this through Shortbox, there isn't exactly a price tag on it, because what you got was like you spent $30 and you got 6 books plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So there's no individual price on this book. I would recommend going to shortboxuk.com and seeing if they have any more in stock and what they might cost. Remember, though, they are coming from the UK, so you're going to have to pay extra shipping. Okay. Our next book is Canto 3, Lionhearted, number 4, for $3.99. Publishers IAW Publishing. The writer is David M. Buher. Artist is Drew Zucker. Colorist Vittorio Astone. Lettering by And World Design. Genre is fantasy. It was released November 16th, 2021. What it's about. In the frozen north, Canto confronts someone he never thought he would see again, Rune, leader of the Vicus and the enslaver of his people. As the Shrouded Man's army approaches, Canto must make one last desperate plea to his old foe for aid. But even if Canto succeeds, will that be enough against the Shrouded Man and his forces? What do I think? I think Buher brings some really nice reveals, more reveals in this issue, as we learn that Bodil, who was the witch that helped Canto in earlier issues, was Rune's mother, and that she and his brothers tried to stop the Shrouded Man in the past, and his brothers perished, and she fled, more or less. That's how she became an outcast out in the wild, as it were. I thought it was a very well written scene between Rune and Canto, showing how their pasts were similar, and Rune allowing him to speak to the rest of the Vicus, and ultimately them joining Canto and Alara against the Shrouded Man and his armies. Will be interesting to see where that leads. Meanwhile, Canto's Clockwork Warriors have been captured and are about to be tortured to death. So how will this all play out? Will the Shrouded Man force Canto to surrender himself to save his friends? Will it even matter if he was to do so and surrender himself? Because if he does, well, Shrouded Man wins and everybody's enslaved to him again. There's 2 issues left to tell a tale, and I'm wondering if it will actually conclude the story finally. This is the 3rd series of Canto, and it's not that I'm getting bored with it. I'm just, things need to have closure at a certain point, and so I'm getting to the point where I feel like this needs to be brought to its final conclusion for the story. The rating for this, it's recommended for ages 10 and up, and my rating is 4 out of 5 stars. Book here. You can see. Let me get the book out of the bags. Didn't have time to scan all the pages like I normally do, and I apologize for that. Just like I said, I was battling different health issues this week. So there's some of the artwork. This is where Canto and Rune are talking about the evidence that Canto has brought against the Shrouded Man, how to defeat him, and where he got it from. And he's like, well, she abandoned me and left me behind and everything. And very telling the whole history, basically, and explains that Bodil was his mother, and what they did and what happened. And so, it's well done, very well done. I'm very pleased with it as far as the story goes. And after they get through talking, he cuts his bonds and says, "Yeah, okay, you've convinced me, but it doesn't matter. You're still gonna go talk to the other. I'll give you permission to speak to the other Vicus and let them decide what the fate is." And so there you go. But it's a pretty cool book, and CANTO usually is. It's usually a good 3.5 to 4.5 star book on a regular basis. So, and it doesn't want to go back in the bag. There we go. So good stuff. Our next book is Green Lantern number 8. $4.99. Publisher DC Comics. Writer Geoffrey Thorne. Artists are Marco Santucci, Chriscross, with Juan Castro doing some inks on Chriscross's art as well. Colors are by Mike Attier. Letterer is Rob Lee. The cover is by Bernard Chang and Alex Sinclair. The genre is science fiction, political drama, superhero. It was released November 16th. What it's about: John Stewart rescues Kilowog and the rest of the GL Corps members that were with Kilowog, and then crosses through a barrier into another dimension to fight a so-called Lightbringer, all while being told that his journey is no longer as a lantern and that he has ascended to whatever the next level of existence is supposed to be. Meanwhile, Sojourner Moline is trying to solve the murder of the Guardian Zoa, and her assistant, Pyafel Akoluan, may have figured out the case, but in so doing, she exposes the culprit, the Guardian Mnemosyne. What are Mnemosyne's plans, and can Joe stop her? What do I think of this? I think Geoffrey Thorne's still doing solid work with the story. It just seems a little bit slow going as he's telling multiple stories happening simultaneously and has split them. And you're kind of going back and forth between the two. And I'm sure that the so-called fans want Hal to come in and fix everything because that's how every other writer would do it. But I'm so glad that Thorne has put Hal in the corner and is letting other lanterns have the spotlight. I can't say that I don't wish he would get the whole John Stewart Ascension stuff over and done with, because I do, but we'll see where it goes. I also wonder if Chriscross is staying additional issues or just spelling Tom Rainey for an issue, because Tom Rainey was the artist on the first 7 issues. I think, though, it might be that he might be taking over this arc, and that would be interesting to see. I'd recommend it for ages 13 up. I give it 3.5 stars. And we'll take a quick look at that art. I'm not sure which one's which right now, but I'm pretty sure this is Santucci stuff, but I could be wrong. But that's where Kilowog and his allies are fighting their final battle here, trying to survive. When John finally breaks through into this barrier and starts cleaning up the mess and protecting his allies. All the while he's being told, you're not a Green Lantern, you're more than that. You need to be more than that, and he's still arguing and fighting the opposition, telling his sidekick to shut up. And then it cuts back to Joe and Preafe talking about what happened with the Guardians and what was going on. It's all well done. Pretty happy with the book. Like I said, it's a 3.5, 4-star book. No problem. Okay, our next book is I See a Night. And this is publisher Shortbox UK again. Creator is Xulia. Not Julia, but Xulia. The X. Vicente. The genre is fantasy. Released October 21st. Again, I received my Shortbox collection on November 12th. What it's about. Since childhood, Olivia has been able to see a headless knight who is invisible to everyone else. Is it an omen, a ghost, or something much more real? As she grows older, Olivia becomes accustomed to the knight's presence in her life, but knows, too, that she must one day finally confront it. But never did she suspect that the knight was her protector, a spectral spirit under oath to guard her until her final moments, to bear witness to all of her mistakes, pains, and heartaches. And in that confrontation comes a lifelong friendship. And the head that she's carrying in her hands on the cover is actually the knight's head, and you can put it on the head and it'll sit there, but then you can also knock it free. It's kind of weird, but anyway, what do I think about this book? Damn, this was good. I'm going to be so ticked off because this is probably going to get passed over for next year's Eisner's Awards, because it's one of those books that was crowdfunded and it won't have the mass print, mass exposure to the public, so it'll probably get overlooked, which is really a shame. And I think that some people who will see this book will probably think that the story doesn't really show the entire lifelong friendship or explain the knight's actions at the end of the story. But I think in the page count given and the way it's used and how Vicente paces it, everything works just right, just beautifully. I don't think you need to have it spelled out for you. I think you can figure it out if you actually are paying attention to what you're reading. I was very pleased with this book, and I hope to see a wider release in the future. Like I said, Shortbox does a great job selecting it, and some of their other books is one of their projects. But because it's a UK company, and it is from a Kickstarter, it really is missing the audience it richly deserves in America, I think. And I hope that Xulia Vicente gets more face time in the American indie comic scene. Certainly deserves it. I recommend it for ages 13 and up, 4.5 stars. And this book also came with a mini comic, which is called The Path of the Night, which was the original 8-page version of the story with some additional character sketches, which was also quite interesting to look at and compare between the two. And that was great stuff as well. So let's take a quick look. This is a little bit oversized print book, wider than a traditional comic. So you would probably need a magazine-sized protecting bag. Has a nice back cover design of the knight's sword. There's spot gloss on the head. I don't know if yeah, there it does show a little bit of spot gloss on there. It's only spot gloss on the cover. And ever since she was a little girl, Olivia could see the knight without the head. Or the head being carried around by the horse. And then you see the knight looking around. Huh? What? And of course, really well done. I mean, the head's spinning around looking like, what? And then, to glare down, the knight thrusts, their head that's being held in the hands right down my face. Don't you think that's kind of creepy? Yeah, you're right. Let me put it on. There you go. Handshake. Anyway, as the story progresses, Olivia learns that it's basically the night that will take it's death's head, so to speak, and it will take your life at the very end, at your last moments, and you're not supposed to see them, and usually nobody does until right before they're taken. But Olivia sees them in childhood. They don't really explain why. It doesn't really matter. They become friends, and no one else can see the night, and the night is like warning Olivia about different relationships. This person's cheating on you. They're going to break your heart. Other things like that. And just really well done. And at the end, when the night has to do their duty, I don't really want to show it because it spoils it a little bit. But it's just really, really well done because it's kind of gives you this story that the knight's done this before for other people and has never had this kind of connection to one of their charges that they've watched over and over the centuries that they've existed. And now here's one that they actually did really get to know, and they got to know them and they had that friendship and they have to do their job. Now, this is a 48-page story, but the original mini comic, The Path of the Night, is only 8 pages. So it's like they really expanded upon what they did. And then there's the little version. And it's very well done, even for the quick version of this that's only 8 pages. Now this one, even if you got the 8-page version, you might be a little bit, but if you get the full story, expanded edition, if you will, that gives all the history and it's in color and everything else, I think you'll really enjoy the book. But this is just a fascinating kind of like process scene that shows you what the original storyline was as 8 pages, and then how they expanded upon it in different character sketches and designs. And there's some of the sketch pages of the characters. Very nicely crafted. I really hope to see Oni or Scout or somebody check this out and get it published in America, if possible, down the road, so that this can get the kind of exposure that in America that I think it really deserves. Okay. Our next book is MAZEBOOK number 3 from Dark Horse for $5.99. Pardon me. The writer and illustrator is Jeff Lemire, with letters by Steve Juan's. Genre is dark fantasy, and it was released November 17th, 2021. To give a recap of what this story is, Will, the lead character, is a melancholy building inspector who's been grieving the loss of his puzzle-loving daughter for years. However, after receiving a mysterious phone call from a girl claiming that it's his daughter and that she's trapped in a labyrinth, he sets off on a journey fighting through the corridors, tunnels, and monsters of his city on a mission to bring her back home. In this issue, Will's found where the center of the maze is, but when he goes out into the real world, it ends in sorrow at a dead-end alleyway. Unable to accept this, he begins to punch the brick wall until he breaks his hand, or at least seemingly breaks his hand. He definitely busts his knuckles and bleeds all over the place. He returns home only to find that he's locked himself out of his apartment. A neighbor, Lisa, takes him in and treats his injury, and they talk for a while. Ironically, she works at the city's historical archives, trying to protect landmark buildings from being torn down for new buildings. the very ones he's inspecting and approving and planning in his job. So it's kind of an interesting counterbalance there. Anyway, he tells her of his adventure, and she doesn't think he's nuts, that whatever it is he's seeking, there's something there, even if it isn't his actual daughter. Will notices that there is a photo of Lisa and a dog on the mantle in her living room, but there is no dog in the apartment. He asks her about it, and she tells him that the dog ran away 2 years ago. After his time with Lisa, he decides to get a tattoo of the maze that he just solved, and then goes back to the alleyway because he knows there's something he must have missed. So he sits on the ground with his back to the wall he just punched the day before, and whether he enters a dreamlike state or some other altered state, it's kind of inferred visually that he does this, but Lemire's kind of playing around with things. He could actually be, it could be all dream, or he could actually be going into another, shifting into another dimension of reality. He wakes up and realizes that there's a sewer grate that was covered by trash bags. So he clears that area, opens the sewer gate, and lo and behold, there's a ladder to the sewers below. So he climbs down, walks through the sewers to another ladder, climbs up that ladder, and enters a different area of the city. Or a dream world, or whatever it is. I would say dream world because the dog that ran away from his neighbor is standing in the alleyway and says, "Took you long enough." And that's how they end this issue. What do I think? Well, since there's only 2 issues left of the series, and I hope that it will conclude at the end of those 2 issues, there's going to have to be some pretty fast action coming up in the next issue. I mean, the dog's line is as much a snark at Lemire's pacing of this story as it is at Will the character. That being said, Lemire is not lollygagging, though. There is a method to what he's doing, and there's a reason for the pacing to be the way it's been and the way it is. So I really can't fault him for it. There's certain symbolism going on visually that requires a certain pacing that he's doing. The scene where he gets the tattoo is relatively short, but it's important to the story on a number of fronts, both for Will as a character and for the dream symbolism it represents, for example. So that's like an extra, even though it's a very short scene, it's like a page or 2 only in the book. Different things like that that are taking up a page here, a page there. And you might ask yourself, well, why is it there? There is a reason for it, because he's setting things up and resolving them. And it's not entirely fluid transitions, but he gets to it at a point. And if you're paying attention, you'll go, oh, when this was going on back in this point of the story, that's what this is referring to. So there is, he's doing a good job on it. Though I do find that there is maybe a little bit too much deliberance in what he's doing at times. But I do think he's aware of it. And I think that he's given the audience, like myself, that wink at the end of the issue with the dog's comment. The problem is when you make this comment 3/5 of the way through your story and over 120, closer to 140 pages of story between the first 3 issues, it kind of also pulls the reader out of the story to potentially question what you're doing and where the story is going. It is something of a storytelling gamble on his part, and we're just going to have to wait and see if it pays off. I do recommend it for ages 13 and up. I give it a 3.5 star rating out of 5. There's the book. There's some very nice design work going on here. He pulled out an actual part of Canada and did the map of Canada and drew his daughter's maze over the map to find where in the actual city his daughter is, in the labyrinth, so to speak. Very well crafted, and this is not a hand-drawn thing. This is a digital overlay of an actual map, and then the physical drawing overlay for the map. And then he figures out where he's got to go, and he's running there. He gets to the alleyway, and he's like, "What? No, 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 no! This can't be it. This has to be the place. But what's going on?" And of course, there's the wall. He's like pressing on the wall. What do I got to do to this wall? There's I got to go through this wall because this wall was blocking me. And as you can see, the trash cans over there are blocking that grate on the right-hand side of the page there. I do like the kind of repetitiveness of this scene. Again, he punches the brick wall with his hand a few times. And he punches it hard enough that I guess he actually does more than just damage his hand. He does actually knock a few chips out of the brick wall, which is, means he had to smash his hand up pretty damn good, I would think, to do that. And to be in that much of a blind rage to do it twice, once would have been enough for most people. I think. Have you ever punched a wall, folks? It's not fun, especially a brick wall. I mean, it's one thing you punch a wall that's like, oh shoot, I can't think of the word. It's not plasterboard, but what we make traditional interior walls with, that you can punch through if you punch hard enough, and even that can hurt your hand. So you're with a brick wall, it's like pretty something else. And after he's got his tattoo and stuff, he's got his tattoo on the arm, which is basically the same symbol as what he figured out for the maze. And he's back in that alleyway. And he realizes he's not going to get through that wall. That wall is a block. And, in a way, maybe you might feel like this is a little bit redundant for the same 4 panels with more or less the same scene, and that does take up the whole page. So the pacing, maybe you could cut some of this and maybe save a few pages that way, but he falls asleep, and then, as you can see, he's kind of warping, melting, dripping back into the wall behind him. And that's what I'm saying. Is he dreaming, or is he actually shifting into another realm of dimension? That's when he wakes up and says, "Hey, wait a minute. How did I not see this before? There's the grate." And he takes up the grate, and he's like, "Oh, hello." There's how we go next. So he climbs up, and like I said, took you long enough. It feels that way a little bit. So, it's all right though. It's an enjoyable book for what it is. I don't know if this book is going to get the acclaim of some of his other works that Lemire has done. I don't think it's as strong as Sweet Tooth or some of his other work that he's done, but it's an entertaining story. Let me get this. There we go. Back in the board. Sometimes with these new bags, it's difficult to get them back in the bag. All right. Our next book is Temple. From Shortbox UK, creator Jack T. Cole, genre is fantasy, and it was released in October 2021, received on November 12th. And what it's about: a foxling journeys through lush lands to a magical temple floating in the sky. This largely wordless comic is a stunning testament to Jack T. Cole's artistic prowess. Best known in America for his work on the Image series Tartarus, this is a chance to see Cole working entirely on his own without a writer. What do I think? Well, for the most part, it's a nice book to look at. I do kind of wish the foxling had kept his clothes on. This becomes a mature reader's book because it runs around nude and it has full frontal genital nudity depicted multiple times. Now, it's not like a giant scene or anything like that, but it's not a deal breaker for me in terms of storytelling. But imagine what all the fanboys who outraged over bat penis are going to think if they see this book. And I really didn't feel that it was necessary to the story per se. I thought that the character could have been running around with pants on. It wouldn't have changed much of anything. So in that respect, it becomes a mature reader's book, definitely. Overall, the story's all right, but it probably could have used some more script to give some of the visuals a little more context than they seem to. I think I would have liked just a little more meat on the bone in the writing sense. Again, it's recommended for mature readers due to the nudity. It's not like it's gratuitous necessarily, but it is there. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. And here's the book. It's got a nice self-typed cover that folds out in the back end like that to give you the full wheel. That's a giant wheel through a giant floating temple. It came down from out of the stars and crashed, and then part of its pieces are on the planet, and some of it is floating still. Again, this is the first front half, and then opens, and we see the temple and the gear over here, the temple right there, and the foxling kind of howling or baying at the sky as things float through the air. And just traveling through the lands, and it goes and climbs up the gear and looks outside, looks outwards over the lands from the top of the gear. Now, for some reason, it gets to a certain point in the temple or whatever, and decides to take off his pants, and it's running around naked for a lot of this point. It's just a little bit from nudity. You can barely, you can see it's there, but you can figure it out. But it's not like, oh my gosh, big deal. Like I say, some people would throw a fit over it. There's a few other scenes in there where they show it, and it's like, it's not like it's huge or anything like that. But basically, he fixes the temple and helps it go back to doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it's a nice enough story for what it is. I just kind of wish there was more to it, story-wise, in terms of script. Maybe to explain a few minor things, but visually, it pretty much tells the story. I do enjoy looking at Cole's art. Very underrated artist in America. Tartarus, I've reviewed Tartarus from Image on this show before. It usually gets a 3.5 to 4. But I have to admit, I got a little bit tired of that story, mostly from the writing, though. This, I think, needed a little more of a writer to it, but overall, pretty decent book. Alrighty. And that seems to be our reviews for today. Hope you liked the episode. We will be back tomorrow with another episode of reviews. I'm going to review Moving, which is about a couple dealing with the process of moving out of their apartment and not being able to let go of the attachments of having their history there or whatever. And then there's another story called Gristle that I haven't had a chance to finish reading yet. And then there'll be another book called Squad, which is a full graphic novel that I just got from the library today. And it will be about, well, if you've seen the horror movie Ginger Snaps, it's kind of like that meets a cheerleading squad that are they're all werewolves in a pack. So I'm waiting to see what that turns out to be in the end. So those three will be reviewed tomorrow, and we'll also have some live draw stuff tomorrow. Probably going to start doing the live draw around noon tomorrow. So I will see you guys at that time. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode or you think others might, please do me a favor and hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to continue to get content from my channel. As always, I thank you for watching and for your support. If you have questions or comments, you can find me on social media at Lewis.BrightRaven, on Facebook, at Twitter at LewisBrightRave2. You can see some of my artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright-Raven, exclusively on YouTube. If you have other questions or comments that you don't want to post publicly, you want to ask me a question, you want to commission artwork from me, something, maybe recommend a topic of discussion for the show, Quoth the Raven LBR72@gmail.com is the primary address to check out and reach out to me at. And if I don't get back to you within a day or two, try lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. That's all for now. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.